Good morning, IndieWeb fans. It's Chris Aldrich. I wanted to do a quick IndieWeb type demo of how I have integrated my own personal website running WordPress with the free and open source product Hypothesis. You can find a public version and some details at web.hypothesis. And that's hypothes.is. It's an open source project that you can download the code and run it on your own server. Or you can use a free public version and create a free account. And you would use this to highlight or annotate almost any page or piece of something on the internet. And to give you a quick little introduction for what that looks like, let's go to John Naughton's online diary, Memex 1.1. There is a browser extension for Firefox and Chrome, and here in my case I'm using Chrome. Or if you'd like, there's a bookmarklet you can set up that uses their VIA extension, that's VIA. In my case, we'll use the Chrome extension. If I click on the button, you'll see that it pulls out, it opens Hypothesis, pulls out their sidebar, which you can open and close. There are no annotations on the page. So let's create one. I'm going to highlight this quote of the day from Dave. You can highlight it, which will show up in yellow there. If we did want to annotate it, we can click on that highlight, go in and change it. We can click edit, and maybe we want to type a reply, or maybe make some notes. If we are feeling industrious, maybe let's add a tag. Hypothesis is a good one. And then the service will allow us to either post it publicly so that others can see it and share it. So if you're in a classroom setting and you're reading something online, let's say, you can share it with a larger, broader classroom. Or in my case here, let's only publish this annotation to my personal account so only I can see it. So there it is. So we can then hide that. But let's go to an annotation I made last week and see how we can own all of the data and metadata from our annotations and highlights online using Hypothesis. So let's stay on John's site. We can go to a post he made about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Again, you'll see Hypothesis is already running on this page, and we can open it up to see the annotation I made last week. If we click on it, it'll scroll down the page and show us the version of the section I highlighted last week. He essentially was using a Kindle to do some highlighting and annotations for some work he was doing. I've done that in the past. I found it tremendously painful, and usually have to jump through a few extra hoops to be able to do anything with that data. And that's one of the reasons I like Hypothesis so much. So I highlighted his post. I wrote, as you can see, a little reply over here, added some tags. Now in my case, I'm using the public version of Hypothesis with a free account. And Hypothesis nicely makes available an RSS feed, or a variety of RSS feeds. In my case, I'm taking the RSS feed from my personal account and feeding that through the service If This Then That, which then creates a private draft post on my WordPress website. So let's go see what that looks like. You can see from my homepage here that I have an annotation post type on my website. If we click on that, you'll see here is the published version of the annotation I made on John's website with Hypothesis. Now, your version, if you use the RSS feed and publish it to your WordPress site, might not look quite as fancy as the version I've got here. I've added one or two additional pieces to create kind of a better reply context or annotation context here using the PostKinds plugin for WordPress. And within that, I've even gone further and created a specific annotation post type so that we get this fun little icon here and the word annotation. But in general, PostKinds as a plugin for WordPress will take the URL you give it and suck in the title of the post, the author of the post. If it's able, it'll pull in an icon for that thing as well as the name of the website it found it on. In my case, here is the highlight that I made on John's website, and I've added some fun little CSS so that it shows up in a highlighter yellow on my website in a kind of a skeuomorphic setup there. And then below that, you'll see pulled in also the data, or the RSS feed pull in the data of the annotation I actually made. So let's explore this for just a second. If we scroll down the page, you can see that I have syndication copies here listed on my website. There's a little icon down here in the corner. If you click on that, it will take you to the copy of the annotation that lives on the Hypothesis server side. It's got the date and the time, the annotation I made, as well as, or the highlight I made, as well as the annotation and the tags, which is a lovely thing. My website will send both pingbacks, trackbacks, and web mentions, although I don't anticipate that John Naughton has those set up on his website to be notified of that. And further, Hypothesis doesn't send notifications to the website that was annotated. So since in some sense my reply using Hypothesis was a reply to John, I did send him a notification on Twitter. So if you click on the Twitter link, it'll go to the tweet that I sent John to give him a little notification about the post, and then if he clicks on it, obviously it comes back from Twitter to my website to show both the context of the thing I annotated and my reply to it, which I think is pretty slick. If we scroll back up, the last piece you'll notice, and I've added this in by hand, hopefully we'll make it a little less manual process off in the future, but I've got a little fleuron here. If you hover over it, it'll say, click this annotation in situ. This is linked to a custom URL that Hypothesis provides, and if we click on it, it will take us to John's page, open up the Hypothesis interface, scroll down the page to where that annotation lives on the page, and it will show you the highlight there and the annotation as well, which I think is just some really fantastic UI. So my annotation now, you'll notice, lives in 3 places. It lives on John's website with Hypothesis attached. There's a copy on the Hypothesis website. There's a copy on my website, and because I sent a version to Twitter, there's also one now living on Twitter as well. If you go to Hypothesis's website, you can do a quick user tag search for my username. You'll find my 2,249 annotations and growing. If we go back here about a week to where I made that annotation, you can click on this and expand it. It'll show you the highlight portion that I made, the response that I did, and the tags as well as some metadata relating to the post. So that's essentially how I'm leveraging a free account on Hypothesis and their ability to highlight and annotate and tag portions of the web, and then I'm able to use a simple RSS feed to suck that data from Hypothesis server to my website, which I own and control, and use to some extent like an online notebook or a commonplace book, so that all the bits and bobs that I annotate and have online then come live on my website, where I can use and do whatever I want with that data off in the future. I'll post this to YouTube and naturally to my own website. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop in there and ask them. Some of this setup is very minimal. I think if you're conversant with WordPress, know what an RSS feed is, and have a Hypothesis account, you could probably set this up in 20-30 minutes or less. If you go through the additional work of doing post kinds, there may be some work in terms of how their documentation works and creating a custom annotation type the way I have. But it should be fairly straightforward, and then you can round off the corners or edges as you see fit, or as you'd like to have them appear on your website or not. You can always do this stuff and post it privately on your back end, just so you've got the data for some future use off in the distant future. But there's a quick little overview of how all this works. Hopefully you'll be able to take some bits and pieces from it and implement it yourself, having seen how the overview works. If you have specific questions, flag me down at a homebrew website club or an indie web camp, and maybe we can help you build this for yourself. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.